I'm Dion Koster. I am a game director and founder, co-founder of Team Reptile.
And how is everything feeling over at Team Reptile with the game's release so close now?
A lot of them seem to be a bit stressed but excited. I'm more neutral. I did my thing, expressed my expression, and what people think of it is not my business.
You're just gonna block it out until you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know the game, who may watch this video, could you sum up the game in 3 sentences?
Yeah. So I did this a couple of times for various stores and publications. Always typed it out, but if I have to improvise here, I would say it's a game where you hang out on the street and you do graffiti, you dance, you face off against other crews, and you get in trouble with the police. And in the meantime, you find out about yourself, about what happened to you, specifically to your head that you lost.
Phenomenal. Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the story and the fact that it seems to initiate with some horrific decapitation. Well, probably not horrific, but some decapitation of I believe Red is the name of the character you play as.
Yes.
And could you maybe say a bit more about the story and about the world of, I think it's New Amsterdam?
It goes back to me drawing up the characters, and I had this feeling like I should be representing the stuff I'm into, but projecting it into the future. So I was designing characters that all have a cyber element to them, and this character was just one of those, was not the first or anything. And I thought, I'll just do a body part, something like the head. So let's make a guy with a robot head. And then looking at it afterwards, I was like, okay, I gotta know why this happened. What has happened to his human head? Maybe it's doing other stuff somewhere, looking for his body or something. So it gave me loads of questions, and I thought I want to explore that. And I thought it can play into a lot of themes that feel quite at home on the street, like looking for your roots, who you are, and representing where you're from, and that kind of thing. So that's how that story started. And the more I began to explore that, the more I thought, like, wait a minute, of course I'm getting influence from a lot of places, a lot of games, but also other media, fashion even. But in the end, I'm also representing where I'm from and sharing my experiences that I've come across in life. And so I thought, well, for me, Amsterdam was that fictional, crazy fantasy place where I went to as a kid, and thought, like, whoa, this is where some real fun stuff is happening. And I thought, well, let's just represent that and make this city into New Amsterdam, symbolizing that whole hero's journey.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds amazing. And that sort of world, you said that you're sort of drawing from your own past. Did you sort of, in your own life, spend a lot of time, breakdancing and graffitiing and doing all those sorts of things on the streets?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I wouldn't have this much passion for it if I just dipped my toe in it like that. So yes, I'm from a very young age dancing already, as far as I can remember even. And I started skating, inline skating, aggressive inline, when I was 7 or something, and kept doing that. But then when I was 13, I really got into breakdance. And that's when like a new world opened for me. 'Cause of course, skating you do on the street, you meet loads of people there, but it's not that like rigid, big like connecting culture that hip hop is. So from breakdance, I met loads of friends and got a view into this world of all these different elements and how they all originated from that same spot there in New York at the time. So I was into this, like before I even started making games. Although it wasn't too much later that I was sitting at my computer and typed up "make game" into Google to find a program called Game Maker, and just went to town with it. Yeah.
I actually have a video that I will put up on the screen here that I got off Twitter of you doing some of the motion capture for some of the dances in the game. You know, you've got the moves, you know what you're talking about with these things. Another thing that stands out to me about the game visually is it's mixing that sort of, you know, Y2K graffiti street look with the cartoony look, much like things like Jet Set Radio. But what are some other sources of inspiration that have played into the look of New Amsterdam and the game as a whole?
Yes, so there's a lot to mention. Of course, from my own side, I've started with breakdancing, but went into graffiti and loads of other styles of dancing. But graffiti I actually went into a bit more, and I still write every now and then. And so the color use there is so wild and interesting, and it matches, like, I mean, even in graffiti you see often enough, you see cartoon characters featured next to the piece and everything. You have the colors anyway, you're making it pop on the more like bland reality around it, right? So graffiti itself is also doing this this color use and this outline use and everything. So the visual style of graffiti surely inspired a lot of the visual style of this game, next to, of course, games that were doing that, which I discovered later after I had been dancing and doing graffiti for a while. Among those, Jet Set Radio Future. I hadn't played the original one or hadn't heard of the original one on the Dreamcast until much later. Didn't know there was one before it. Several Japanese artists, talking about, of course, Ryuta Ueda from Jet Set Radio, but also Ippei Gyobu, who is an artist who nowadays does a lot of mecha design, but back then he did a couple of games, among those Cool Toon, which also features a lot of dancing, actual what we call locking and top rock, and stuff that's also being put into this game, with the added thing that we actually named them, which I thought was always kind of too bad, that you had a lot of Japanese games featuring dance. That was dope, but none of them actually mentioned what the dance is that they're doing. And so you couldn't, like, if you wanted to dance like that, you couldn't just look that up and say, oh, what are my classes nearby in my city? But with us, you can actually see the name there, and you can look those up, and you might find like a really dope style of dancing in the game, and then just go and search that up, maybe join a class, and maybe, you know, it would become a hobby or a passion. No.
Is that something you hope for from the game, that it's going to push people to sort of embrace this culture and community that you're really passionate about?
Absolutely, yeah. I think if I would like to have any impact, I would like people to go out and have fun. Actually, just once you finish the game, I want people to leave their keyboard. Just don't think about the game anymore. Think about the fun stuff you could be doing, instead of being inspired to make games. Rather be inspired to go out and have fun, make friends. Because I feel like lately there's been a bit less of that, and people get stuck in a cycle. And of course, many games and media facilitate that nowadays. Try to get you into this loop of keep playing, go to the next match, or just go to the sequel to the next game, because that's all that matters in the online world. But I rather break that cycle and say, no, this game should be the game that makes you stop playing games.
The final game, the last one,
the ultimate.
And hopefully it'll be a good point to end on, because there's been a lot of people have been clamoring for a game that focuses on the locomotion, the roller skating, and just skating in general, and traversal and tricks and things. People are missing those sorts of games. Is Rush Cyberfunk going to sort of take that aspect of it any further than previous games of this kind?
Yes, yeah. First of all, a lot of the visual style, of course, is influenced by Y2K era stuff, but it's definitely not limited to it, because there's 90s stuff in it as well, of course. And going back further, there's actually a lot of 70s stuff. 70s was an era of a lot of futurism and like many architecture, many vehicles or devices you will see in the game actually speak also to the aesthetic back then, with a lot of space age stuff and those design styles. So it's something that recurs, and I wouldn't say it's a retro game. I wouldn't label it myself as such. There's also a lot of fashion in there that is quite cutting edge, and a lot of it also inspired by what has been done in the last few years. I like to think that the aesthetic of the future is not limited to an era or something. And when it comes to building upon that to say something new, I think we have a couple of things that haven't been seen and heard before. We, of course, speaking of only video games, we're playing a bit with what Jet Set Radio did with the inline skating, but we've got BMX, we've got skateboarding, and then we're also playing a bit with what Tony Hawk Pro Skater did back in the 90s, when they made this like trick system gameplay. And I love loads of trick games from that era and beyond it, SSX, and there was even like a surf trick game. These were very popular at the time. But what I like about our way of approaching is that we're using it more as a medium, and we're not going totally into it trying to create a simulation. It's a showcase really of these styles, but there is a trick system, and it's actually a lot about that. It's about how you battle the other crews, how you take territory. Is actually a battle with the trick system. They get score and you get score at the same time, and you go neck and neck in that way. So it hasn't really been done before in this way, to combine these two type of games. The trick system is slightly different than what you would expect, because you cannot bail, you cannot fall like you did in those games, because we already have several things like exploration and other combat that becomes more of a focus and becomes very annoying if you then also have to take into account, I'm landing in the correct angle, which to me is fun if you don't have any other danger in the game. But for us, it was like, okay, we're about something else. It's about the idea of it, and we're not gonna replace the feeling of it, right? You should be going outside to do it yourself for the whole experience.
You mentioned that there's other kinds of combat in the game. Can you, or other kinds of ways you can fight in the game? Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So the first thing I said, starting to create this whole thing, I did understand that I wanted conflict. There needed to be, especially if you're doing graffiti, it's not graffiti if there's not somebody stopping you from doing it, or there's rules against it or something. So there needed to be conflict. And I thought that, well, I'm not gonna, have people grab a gun or get out the wrestling moves. I'm just gonna limit all the input and everything you do to the tricks you do, to be stylish about everything, and to reward that with speed. That's a lot of how the system works, is that the more stylish you move around, the more boost power you get, and that boost power can be used to do better tricks, but also to actually get to make longer jumps, but also getting faster to places. So we did have the police, we brought them in, and I was also fighting for having them mostly as being more of a nuisance, to make them be in the way of doing your shit, that you wouldn't go out and kill cops or anything, which is what would happen if you just put some police running around in the game normally. Players would be like, oh, the enemy, and then go up and punch him in the face, which is more like a GTA thing to do. But for us, I wanted them to be more like, okay, they're in the way, but actually you don't care about all of that. You're not an activist or something. You're not trying to change the world, actually, even. You're just about your own stuff, and you don't care about anything that happens around you. So, but you are forced in many locations to fight off the police, because they're trying to take you in. And so what we did, instead of grabbing a gun, you can do tricks, and if those tricks land on the enemy, you will do damage to them. and there's a couple of special interactions you can do. You can, of course, spray paint them to stun them. You can kick them up into the air and do a little graffiti finisher on them that will leave them running away. Well, next to just police officers, we also have a lot of military specialists coming over. It starts with turrets that are built into the street that will try to chain you with handcuffs that are flying around you. And then there are also giant police robots that has a bit of Pot Labor vibes to them. Super overpowered police mechas. And you have to do several things to take them out. But it all plays into doing tricks. Because I just felt that was the vocabulary that you have in this game.
Absolutely. Fighting off police mechs with the power of cool tricks. What could be better, really? And it sounds like, you know, I'm sort of imagining from what you're saying, from going from the police to sort of these turrets to the mech, a certain, you know, progression of the game getting more and more intense and tough, which makes me wonder how much content is there in this game? How long would you say it is? How much is there to do?
So we've got boroughs. We got 5 boroughs that are the main stages. Then we've got more of a hub area that connects them all, and we've got a home base, the hideout. And in all of them, there is graffiti. There's more in the boroughs themselves. There's 5 crews aligned with the 5 boroughs. They control them all, and you take them all to become all city, which is a graffiti term for, you know, being the best in the city. And we've tested a lot. The game has changed while we tested, so it is a bit vague now how long exactly it takes to complete the main story. And of course, people can go back and do all the graffiti that was left that they didn't need to do per se. And there's loads of collectibles. All the music in the game can be collected separately, and you can get them on your phone that you can open at any time to play any song you like. So there's loads of things to get, things to complete, and characters to find. I think just doing the main thing now is 8 to 10 hours of gameplay, which is an estimate. But that's like a regular playthrough if you're not a game developer on it. Yeah.
If you're not trying to be a completionist.
Oh yeah, that also. Yeah. And a completionist, I wouldn't even know. We'll have to see. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to find out. I think I know a few people who have been waiting for this game for a little while, who I think are gonna try and get every single thing they possibly can. And you said about on your phone, you can sort of look at things that you've seen before and listen to some of the music, which brings me to the soundtrack, which a lot of people are very excited for. The soundtrack was a big part of previous games of this kind, and obviously, I know that I believe a couple of tracks on the soundtrack being done by Hideki Naganuma. Do you think the whole soundtrack is gonna please fans of this unique kind of music?
Well, so when it comes to picking the soundtrack, I just went with my own intuition, and I think going in and making a soundtrack that fans of previous similar games like is a trap, and will likely give you something regurgitated. So I just blank mind, just ignored all that, and I'm a dancer myself, so I have a certain music taste, stuff that I like to dance to, stuff that I like to listen to, and just went with that, because I think just expressing ourselves is the most interesting thing for other people. Maybe people won't jive with it. They can always turn the music off, put their own in. No, I don't think we're accounting a lot for that. But the goal of the music in the game changed a bit over development. Some of it was at first just me thinking like, oh, this track goes hard, I'm just asked to put it in. And after a while, I was more like, okay, well, we have a lot of chill music, we have a lot of high energy music. Let me get some of this genre in as well, and then it would fit. Also, the dances that we got in the games is you've got funk style dances, hip hop dances, and house dances too. So you want some house music in it, you want some hip hop music in it, and even with all of that, you still want every one of the tracks to be something crazy, something new. Because it's the future. It's a cyberpunk world. So every funk track's gotta have a cyber element to it. So I thought, okay, what about cyber hip hop? What about cyber house? How can we lift this whole thing up? So a lot of requirements that I had in my mind, but often enough it was just like, okay, this goes hard. Let's get it in.
One thing I am very curious about hearing you talk about that is just, I asked earlier about visual inspirations, but now I'm wondering more about just more general inspirations on obviously some of them come to mind. More general inspirations on the maybe the music, but the gameplay, you mentioned some of the retro futuristic / neo-futuristic / just regular futuristic things. What else has sort of helped bring this game to life?
Inspirations. Well, I always love looking at Mobius, the French comic artist Mobius, who has his style so neatly developed. Every line of his tells so much, and he himself had his own trip into a world that he experienced young in his life when he went to Mexico from France, and spent a lot of time in the desert there. So you can see in his work there's a lot of deserts. There's actually a couple of games who also like quite directly play into this and make a Mobius style game. But for me, I love looking at the essence of that, not the desertness, but just how he represented and also projected forward all these feelings that he had as a kid going to such a transformative place as that. So that's it's more like mentality inspiration. And when it comes to, for example, the story, we've got a couple of Ghost in the Shell moments, but in terms of like storytelling and happenings with machines and minds in machines and etc. And there's a couple of visual character designs that surely would evoke some nostalgia for people who are into anime. I couldn't help but put some of that in, not even consciously. It just happens. But I don't try to stop that too much. Yeah. But it's not like we're doing this furikuri reference on purpose so we can connect with the fans of that thing. No, we don't do service at all like that.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned also the Ghost in the Machine kind of thing when you were talking about Ghost in the Shell. Is the game going to explore a little bit of that with obviously the main character having a robotic head, going to explore, any crazy themes of humanity or who you are as a person?
Yes, indeed. And there's a couple of plot twists even, and I have to be careful not to spoil any. But yeah, it does start out with a little bit of story on how you lost your head, and then being confronted with it and deciding through having joined a crew that was once friends with the one that lost his head, being then inspired to get that head. And of course we can all agree that if you have a new head, it doesn't make a lot of sense to find your previous head, since you are of course a different person. But to a machine that might be a completely different thing, and even then outside of that logical inconsistency, you could still be interested in knowing who the person was that your body is from, like people would like to, if they're adopted, would like to know who their biological parents are, even though it doesn't have a true immediate effect on their life. So some of those argumentations and feelings come across in some of the crews you also meet. Some of them themselves have been, are machines or have been assembled from various other beings. So you're always, like, again, confronted with other people who deal with the question or are just telling you to man up about it.
Well, yeah, it sounds almost like a ship of Theseus kind of problem, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't wait to see how that unfolds in the game, which comes out as of time of recording, I believe. Is it in 2 days?
Yes, it is. 2 days only. Yeah.
My goodness, very soon. Yes, well, what are you, and maybe even the team as a whole, but mostly you, what are you most looking forward to seeing players respond to and react to when the game comes out?
I'm not immediately very stressed or super hyped about seeing certain responses. If people don't like it, then I'm fine with that too. But what I do think that there is a cycle of expression, right? You gotta have, at some point, you gotta have a feedback. You gotta have that it's shown to people, and then you can, you might be able to learn from it. So I've been thinking, like, I could be looking at how to get more impact, even still, how to reach more people without leaving myself behind. So I'll be just generally observing the response to it and making my own little conclusions. But yeah, specific things in the game, there are some secrets in there. Yeah, I have to say, and those could be the fun to see. Some of them are more in plain sight, but are quite illogical or you say mysterious, not explained, and others are quite a bit more difficult to find, and we at the office are placing bets on how long it will take people to find them. That I am interested in. Yeah.
It sounds like you are someone who is very passionate about getting your voice into the product and getting your sort of, and probably the whole team's
vision.
Yeah, your vision. That's the word. Your vision out there, into there, and it's I really genuinely can't wait to see that when I get my hands on the game in a couple of days. But sadly, our time comes to a close. And is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
Thank you very much for your kind remarks. I would just like to say, if everyone can, just enjoy it or see what's up. Go in blind. Don't have too high expectations or too low. And have fun and go out and do that shit.
Absolutely. And when you finish the game, be sure to put the keyboard down and head out and have fun with your friends.
That's right.
That's an important one.